Hello, hello, hello from beautiful Colorado. My name is Samuel Jung K, and I am currently the lead Shilajit hunter and master herbalist for Colorado Shilajit Company. In this video series, I will be discussing what we believe is the greatest of all adaptogenic superfoods and the single greatest natural healing remedy gifted to us by Mother Earth. I think you too will become as excited by this incredible substance called Shilajit as we were and are after our discovery of this amazing gift right here in beautiful, colorful Colorado. You may already know Shilajit by other names: Shilajit, Momio, Momi, Mami, Mineral Pitch, Asphaltum, and others. Shilajit literally translates to destroyer of weakness and conqueror of mountains. Shilajit has been in use for thousands of years and is considered as the highest valued cure-all of any earthly substance.
Look for the Gold Mountain and medical symbol logo in banners on republicbroadcasting.org to watch the full video and see more information. Use code GORBN when ordering. That's GORBN.
You're listening to the Republic Broadcasting Network because you can handle the truth.
The American dream has become a nightmare. Signs of the time are on cardboard on corners in town. Like a cancer that's silently spreading, there's an unspoken fear. We're on our way down. We must take America back.
Good evening, patriots and freedom fighters. Broadcasting from my home studio in downtown Bellefonte, Pennsylvania, the state of independence worldwide, as National Intel report on Republic Broadcasting Network, Liberty Lighthouse. Well, anywhere else you hear it or see it. I'm Peter Serafine, your host for this 2 hours of common sense and constitutional discussion. Tonight, I've got Brent Hamachek going to join us at the bottom of this first hour, so 6:30 Eastern time if you're watching or listening live. Brent from humanevents.com, commongroundcampus.com, and brenthamachek.com. And then at the top of the second hour, 7 p.m. Eastern time if you're watching or listening live, Dave Sumrall, the champion for the Justice for J6 Prisoners movement, is going to be coming on, and I've got a whole bunch of questions for him. There's been a lot of sentences for the J6 prisoners handed down recently. The Proud Boys leader got like 15 years. Wow. So I want to talk to Dave about some of that. But I've been watching or listening to mostly a con law class, a constitutional law class from a law school. And not surprised, but disappointed in what I hear. As expected, it started out with one session, where they actually talked about the Constitution. And then they immediately went into court cases, court decisions, court opinions about how the Constitution should be read. Now, the Constitution was written for you and I, we the people. It's written for us. It's written in plain language. Even though 25 of the 56 men in the room were lawyers, they still wrote the Constitution in common language for us. They could have filled it with legalese and clauses and all that kind of stuff like lawyers do, but they chose not to. So now we have this whole precedence system set up where judges and lawyers look back at old cases to see how the Constitution should be read. What does it really mean? Well, we've got to see what this judge 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 100 years ago, we got to see what this other judge thought about it. It's his opinion. Now, lawyers will tell you that the precedence system is there for continuity's sake. It's there so that you don't have weird, random judges making just completely obscure rulings. But if you actually look at the precedents over the last 240 years, you'll find that even with precedents there, they do that a lot. The Supreme Court has reversed itself many times. And it's done it in as little as 4 months. They've decided a case one day that says X, and then 4 months later, heard a very similar case and said Y, and changed the X ruling, negated it, wiped it off the face of the planet in 4 months. That seems crazy to me. But that also made me think of other stuff. We'll get back to the Supreme Court in just a minute. Let's talk about government itself. Now, I'm of the belief that all government, regardless of what form of government it is going to grow. It's going to take, and when government grows, it tramples on rights. Government power is the inverse of human rights, citizens' rights. Now, our Constitution was written to put constraints on government, to keep it in a box, to keep it within the four corners of the document itself, as they say. So that was the purpose of the Constitution. How well did it work? How long did it take for our federal government to just ignore let's not even talk about the unenumerated rights, the common law rights. How long did it take our federal government before it completely ignored enumerated rights, rights that are spelled out in black and white on parchment? How long do you think it took? I don't want to answer that yet. I want to give you a chance to answer that question before I do. So, being a live call-in show, you can call in to 512-248-8252. Or if you want to answer or comment, but you don't want to be on the radio, you can text 64 my rights. That's 646-974-4487. 512-248-8252 to call in, 646-974-4487 to text your answer. After the ratification of the U.S. Constitution in 1789, how long did it take for our federal government to completely ignore black and white enumerated rights that we, the people, have? While I'll wait for you to answer that, I want to talk about a particular Supreme Court case that has always rubbed me wrong. And it's one that I'm pretty sure I've mentioned before, but I'm going to do it again anyway, because I think it's that important. And it's one of these cases that I think everybody should know about. It's from 1942. But before we get to the case, we need a little bit of background. So let's talk about 1938. It's 1938. The country's in a depression, and Congress passes a law. They pass a law to try to, regulate the costs of food. Which makes, no sense, right? Let's think. It's a depression. There are literally millions of people starving in our country. And Congress passes the Agricultural Adjustment Act of 1938 and limits how much farmers can grow. Now, if you're one of the starving people in the streets of the country, the idea that Congress is going to limit how much a farmer can grow seems counterintuitive. Seems a little counterintuitive to me. I would think grow as much as you can, feed the people. But that's not what this act did. This act limited how much a farmer could grow so that government could regulate and control the prices. So they put a limit on how much wheat you could grow, for example. And it was based on, how much land you had. You had X number of acres, you could grow Y amount of wheat. Well, a gentleman, an Ohio farmer named Filburn, Roscoe Filburn, decided, no, I'm going to grow more. And Roscoe Filburn actually grew a lot more than he was allowed to grow. He grew 293, I think, bushels more than he was allowed to grow, like 3,000 pounds of wheat more than his federal regulated, mandated, allowable amount. So I grew 3,000 pounds of wheat. Now, he gets charged with violating this law and ends up in the Supreme Court. Now, the government's position, even though it was never stated in the documents or in the courtrooms, the government's position is if he's growing 3,000 pounds extra, he must be selling it on the black market. Although they was never accused of that. That was kind of the assumption that was given. Now, Roscoe Filburn says he grew that extra wheat to feed his livestock and feed his family, and then he didn't sell it anywhere. So how did the court go about this? See, Roscoe, Mr. Filburn, and his attorneys, they argued that I'm not selling this wheat. I'm using it for my own personal consumption and that of my own personal animals. It is not part of commerce at all, let alone specifically interstate commerce, which Congress is allowed to regulate. Roscoe's argument was, nope, my wheat is my wheat. I'm not selling my wheat. You have no ability to regulate it, which seems perfectly reasonable to me. But what happened? What did the justices of the Supreme Court, in their infinite wisdom that they get when they put on those black robes, what did they find? Well, they said that Roscoe Filburn should have grown less wheat and then bought what he needed for his livestock. He should have produced less for his own personal consumption, stuck within the limits from the federal government. And they found him guilty. See, the government, the Supreme Court, they kind of aggregated the idea. Was it really a big deal that this one guy, Roscoe Filburn, was growing 2,000 or 3,000 pounds extra wheat? No, that's not really that big of a deal. But if 100 farmers did that or 1,000 farmers did that, well, that's enough to impact the cost of wheat. The price of, free markets, right? Higher supply, lower prices. So they argued that the Supreme Court argued that if enough farmers did this, if we allowed this to continue, then it would drop the price of wheat. Again, millions of people are starving, like literally starving in the streets of our country at the time. So would a lower price really be a bad thing? That aside. So that's what they said. They aggregated his effect with what if other people did the same thing? And it would have this negative impact. So basically what they argued was that by not participating in the interstate commerce, Roscoe Filburn was impacting interstate commerce. That was one of the first, it was, progressive era cases that just dramatically increased the power of our federal government. Because now, before this, Congress could only regulate a product if it crossed state lines. Now, Congress was basically given the power to regulate anything that affects the cost of an item that crosses state lines. So his ridiculously local activity of on his own farm could have impacted the cost of wheat. Therefore, he was impacting interstate commerce. Therefore, they could regulate it. Now, this is just one of many cases like that. What happened with the EPA? It's long been established that the federal government has the right or the power to regulate navigable waterways. Now, to you and I, what does that mean? That means a waterway large enough for a boat would be a navigable waterway. But the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, has looked at this case of Willard v. Filburn and said, well, Filburn wasn't really on interstate commerce, but we could regulate him because he impacted interstate commerce. And the EPA says, well, your little tiny stream that runs through your property, well, it might not be navigable, but it leads to a navigable waterway. That way we can regulate your little stream. And then they took it a step further in a case that was just recently turned down or overturned, where the EPA was trying to say that an adjacent marshland, wetland, which didn't even have a stream on it, no visible water at all, was under their jurisdiction because it led to a stream that led to a river that led to a navigable waterway. And finally, the Supreme Court kind of slapped them down a little bit. There's a lot of cases like this. And then all goes to this precedence thing. What some other judge said impacts how I'm supposed to react here. Now, when we opened the show, I said, how long did it take for our federal government to completely ignore the enumerated rights of we the people before they started stomping on it? I'm going to give you that answer right after I tell you about my new book. My new book, A More Tyrannical King. It comes out in 10 days, September 17th, Constitution Day. I compare the tyranny of our current government to the infamous tyranny of King George III of Great Britain during the time of our American Revolution. I think it's my best book yet. This is my third book. I think this is my best one yet. And I would absolutely love if you all would go out and pre-order it right now. Pre-order it anywhere you can buy books. You can get it on Amazon. You can get it Books A Million and Barnes & Noble. You can get paperback or electronic copy. Pre-order it right now. Tonight, please. I over the course of the day, woke up this morning and I had jumped many spots on the sales rankings. Must have sold a couple overnight. I would love to sell a couple of more and see how high in those sales rankings we could possibly get. So A More Tyrannical King, anywhere you buy books. Or you can go to liberty-lighthouse.com, click on the books links there, and you can see all the different places that you can buy the book. Lots of links there. All right, so back to the question. See if I have an answer in text message. No. Nobody has answered the question yet. The question is, how long did it take? I think it took 9 years. And I base that on the Alien and Sedition Acts. Now, you might think that Hamilton arguing for the First National Bank was a violation of the Constitution, but you have to say there is an argument to be had that maybe a bank is not unconstitutional. That's not really black and white. So I'm gonna look over that one. I want the first plainly obvious violation of our civil rights, our enumerated rights. And that would be under our second president, John Adams, while we were at war, we weren't even at war yet, while there was pending war with France coming. And we had the Alien and Sedition Acts where it became illegal to speak ill of your government. 9 years. 1798, the Alien and Sedition Acts passed. That's it. That's what government does. Government gets put in place, government grows. That's it. I got one person text and said 10 years. That was Sarah. Thank you, Sarah. Pretty close. And somebody else brought up the Whiskey Rebellion. Okay. The Whiskey Rebellion, was it really our federal government completely violating our rights? They were trying to tax whiskey. They have the right to tax. So, I don't know. But there's other things. There was Shays' Rebellion before the Constitution was even written. Our government took maybe 9 years to stomp all over our enumerated rights, the ones that are just plain black and white. The First Amendment stomped all over it 9 years after we were created. And the Supreme Court, they didn't strike it down. The Sedition Acts weren't gone until after Jefferson became president. Jefferson, one of the first things he did was get rid of them. But John Adams, the second president of the United States, stomped all over your First Amendment guaranteed right of free speech. That's insane. And you think, the court is supposed to save us, right? The court is supposed to look at the laws and protect us from the laws. But at different points in our history, the Supreme Court has taken a stance that we're going to presume that a law is constitutional unless you can prove otherwise. Well, how's that for independence? Like the courts are supposed to be independent from government. They're supposed to be their own separate thing. And if they start out with the presumption that the law being adjudicated in front of them is constitutional, how independent is that? I argue it's not very independent at all. And with the Supreme Court, there's a lot of really shady stuff that has gone on in the course of our republic. We all know, Plessy versus Ferguson, right? Remember that one? The Supreme Court case that basically authorized segregation, separate but equal, throughout our country. That case has never been overturned by the court. Plessy versus Ferguson is still valid case law. Now, it was made nullified by the 13th and 14th Amendments, but the courts never nullified it. And there's a lot of them like that. There's a lot of these old cases where maybe they put some boxes around it or whatever. They never nullified it. Now, somebody is probably going to call in and say, what about Brown versus Board of Education? Read the decision. Brown versus Board of Education did not overturn Plessy versus Ferguson. Brown versus Board of Education says that Plessy has no role in education. So separate but equal did not apply to schools, but it was still a valid case law, which I think we need to get rid of that term, case law, because it's not law. It is an opinion of 9 people wearing robes. And how many times in our history, in the Supreme Court dockets, how many times can you go back and you see cases like Plessy versus Ferguson where they were just wrong? How often do we look at the dissenting opinions of some of these old cases and say, see, this guy was right, but he was the only one, or he was one of 2. He was not the majority. Case law is a problem. And I think precedence in itself is a problem because it is proven ineffective. If the Supreme Court can overturn its own rulings in as little as 4 months, in at least one case, back-to-back years in several cases, then the argument that case law creates continuity just crumbles. It's not contiguous to reverse yourself a year later. I think any case that goes in front of any of these federal judges, the first thing they should look at is this thing constitutional based on just a plain reading of the Constitution? Ignore case law, ignore precedents. And if it can pass that first step, if it can just get past the plain reading of the Constitution, then maybe it's time to crack open the case law books and look back at what other tyrants in black robes may have said about the case before. And for the last 20 minutes, I've been talking about this, and I didn't even bring up the fact that who's bound by the Supreme Court? Only the two parties named in the case. It doesn't apply globally automatically. It's only the two parties in the case. But we treat it like it's gospel. Anyway, it's time for this first break. Like I said, promised, we got Brent Hamachek on the other side of this break. We're going to be back in 3 minutes.
You're clear.
Thanks, man. Mr. Hamachek, how are you?
Never better. How are you?
Fan-freaking-tastic.
Enjoying listening to you in the last X number of minutes there.
I saw that. I was debating in my head whether I should bring you in early or should I finish my thoughts.
Oh gosh, your audience can only take so much. But the interesting topic. We set up systems in this country, but we set up systems to control humans, and so the systems are always only as good as the humans within them. And what we're seeing here everywhere now is a failing of humans,
right?
And especially in these, what we've seen now in the January 6th sentencing. I mean, this is the narrow story is I'm talking just specifically about Enrique, who I know. I don't know him well, but I know him. I've met him a few times and worked with him on an event and interviewed him before he went to jail the first time. We did an exclusive at Human Events, the only interview he gave at the time. And so narrowly, that's a tragedy. And then system-wide, here's what we have to watch. And that is what happens when his sentence is appealed. Because if his sentence as appealed is upheld, then we get to have the full weight of what we're really dealing with here. Because that appeal process is supposed to bring with it that sort of, a measure of sanity and objectivity that leaves the trial setting and the conviction and takes a look and says, all right, whoa, wait a minute here. What have we got?
Mm-hmm.
And if an appeals court upholds this sentence, then that is an enormous message from a system standpoint. Yeah. Enormous message.
Well, we've got Dave Sumrall coming on the next segment, and he's the justice for January 6 prisoners.
Yep. Yeah,
guru.
Sure is. Yep.
And I had planned on bringing up Enrique in particular, but there's been a lot of sentences that have come down in the last couple of weeks that seem a little excessive. But then we've also had at least one, and I can't remember. I thought I had bookmarked the story, and now I can't find it. There was at least one fella that got his case thrown out because of new evidence that he was not allowed to present the first time around. So
right, the video evidence that surfaced when it was released to Tucker.
Right. So at least one of them. Why can't they all do that? Like
in Enrique's case, video evidence wouldn't help him. He wasn't there.
All right, guys, we're coming back here.
All right,
you ready?
Yep, ready.
One can be said, what we all must outrun.
Hey, welcome back. I'm Peter Serafine, your host for the evening, and I'm here to remind you that free speech is not free. Support this free speech network and whatever network you're watching or listening from, because we don't get government help. We don't get help from Google's algorithms. We don't get help from, anybody. So help these free speech platforms share out their links, use their promo codes, visit their sponsor pages, visit their own websites, read their stuff, help them out any way you possibly can. And as I promised, we have a guest this evening.
Where do you go when you want the truth about current human events? You go to Brent Hamachek, over at humanevents.com, BrentHamachek.com, and over on Common Ground Campus. And now, welcome into studio, Brent Hamachek.
Welcome, Mr. Brent Hamachek. How are you this
I
evening?
always love that stirring introduction that's played. It fires me up. I'm ready to take the field for a half hour here.
All right. Hey, did you have anything in particular that you wanted to talk about this evening? Because I have been just, I started the show by saying that I've been taking a constitution law course designed for law students. I've been watching the seminars and videos and stuff on YouTube and listening to the debates and the discussions. And quite frankly, I'm disappointed in the entire law system based on what I'm hearing in this course.
Right.
Anything in particular that you want to talk about?
Well, I'm always happy to follow the lead, but I was interested in listening to you prior to the break and talking about the court system and what's going on. And, I think that America needs to be sort of properly terrified at the moment. So we've just witnessed, there's a number of cases, but the one that gets a bunch of press these last, 24, 48 hours, I lose track of time at my old age, but within the last day and news cycle is Enrique Tarrio's sentence for sedition at an event where he wasn't even present in the city. As you were mentioning, dragging out a bit of statutory revelry that's been almost antiquated, right, over time. And it was interesting because if you go back after January 6th and you go a year plus later, there was a bunch of articles written about how it was funny that they talk about overthrowing the government, and conservatives were writing, no one's been charged with sedition or treason, right? And so how can this be? And it was very shortly after that, after all of those opinion pieces came out, that those charges started to be levied. This is not a coincidence, right? Nope. So think about what was happening. And people really need to think about this, is that folks inside the criminal justice system who had been looking at cases and not leveling certain charges heard people in the public square say, well, why are these people why is it being said they're trying to overthrow the government? They're not even charging them with that. And so then these folks who are supposed to be upholding the law, what did they do? They sat back and they scratched their chin and they said, okay, let's do that. This is not the attitude that prosecutors are supposed to have. Nope. Prosecutors, unlike criminal defense attorneys, it's kind of interesting. People always like to criticize criminal defense attorneys. Conservatives pick on criminal defense attorneys. Criminal defense attorneys are the last line of defense, the last line against a totalitarian government. A criminal justice defense attorney, their job is to win at all costs. They are supposed to do everything they can to get their client off, no matter how guilty their client is. They have got to fight for that client because they're not just fighting for that client. They're fighting against a system to keep it in check. Mm-hmm. The prosecutors, on the other hand, are not supposed to be concerned with winning. They're not. They're supposed to be concerned with the administering of justice. And that's a very different thing. So should they want to win if their cause is just and they clearly have a criminal before them? Well, of course they should. But they need to do it always keeping in mind that notion of justice. That's their goal. They aren't about winning. They're about administering justice. The prosecutors in this country, and it's not just at the federal level, it's systemic, have preoccupied themselves with winning the case. And that might sound like it's what they're supposed to do, but think about it really hard. They're not. And to the extent they play that game, they play with our liberties. And now we're seeing that firsthand with an absolutely preposterous conviction and a more preposterous sentence I've said it before on your show. If January 6th was an attempt to overthrow the government, it was led by F Troop, for
Right.
goodness sake. If you don't know the reference, if you're too young, Google it. It was a fun show. You probably still watch it on Hulu or Netflix or something. Who knows? But in any event, this frightens me to no end. And final point on the Terrio case, and you and I were talking off air about it a little bit. What's happened to him is a personal matter of injustice by a system that should scare us all. But if you want to look at for something even bigger to pay attention to when his sentence is appealed. Because if that outrageous sentence is upheld within the system, one level up, where they're supposed to shake their heads and have a clear look and say, okay, all right, trial's over and everything. Let's settle down here and take a look at what's going on. If they uphold a 22-year sentence, I would suggest to you that a lot more is lost than just one case in the January 6th trials.
Yeah. Well, one of the comments that I got in text message that I didn't mention on air was, each case should be heard on its own merits. And that appeal process, that's like you said, it's a usually in front of a panel of judges and not just one. And at that point, they get to shake their heads and start over. Like they can look at what was presented, but they also have the clear-eyed vision of not being in the heat of battle. Now, you said that the defense attorneys are the last line of defense, and I've often said that it's actually the jurors, we the people that serve on juries, that are one of the last lines of defense against tyranny. And that was something that was echoed by Jefferson, or something I stole from Jefferson would be more accurate. The idea that a jury can sit, a jury member can sit in the jury box and just refuse to find somebody guilty of a crime that is an unjust crime based on an unjust law. In modern times, they call that jury nullification.
Right.
But back in the old days, that was jury. The jury, they're not government employees. They're not public officials. They're not tied in any way to any branch of government. They're picked from we the people. So that's why one of the first courses I built for my new online platform was a case about jury independence. And we need to have more people in this country that understand the power they have when they sit in that jury box.
You're right. And I mean, look, you make a very valid point. I think the point is one that I used to make a lot in the world of civil law, because we all complain about the trial lawyers and the large liability settlements and so on. But the last time I checked, it's the members on a jury who render those verdicts and make those awards. It's not the lawyers. So if people on juries would stand up and say, look, I'm sorry you slipped and fell in a Red Lobster restaurant because the floor was wet, but get over it.
Yeah.
Well, this could all come to an end, right?
Yeah.
I actually didn't say that randomly. I was on a jury once for a slip and fall at a Red Lobster restaurant. And but in the criminal world, of course, it's every bit as true, the responsibility that jurors have. And jurors get things wrong all the time. I mean, we had in Illinois, and I hope I get the number right, I believe it was 23 death row inmates back during George Ryan's time as governor, who were set free because of the work that was done out of Northwestern University in exonerating them through DNA evidence. Mm-hmm. So these were people who were sentenced to death on death row. The jury found them guilty, sent them to the gallows, if you will, awaiting the gallows. And then it turns out the jury was wrong. And so here's where I'll go back, though, to some extent and defend the point I made prior. First of all, how on earth can an innocent person be prosecuted? Because if you think about it, by definition, the prosecutor didn't know enough to prosecute them in the first place because they were wrong.
Right.
They were wrong. This isn't about a jury saying, well, we looked at the evidence and we're not sure, so we're going to acquit. It's different. I get that. But in the case of people who were exonerated, that means they were innocent. And the prosecutors prosecuted in the first place. Now, I happen to think that if a prosecutor wins a guilty verdict against somebody who's later proven to be innocent, that prosecutor should be sentenced to jail for the same amount of time that person was sentenced for. That would straighten them up in a hurry, right? But prosecutors have no skin in the game, none, zero. If they make a mistake and an innocent person suffers, so what? It means nothing to them. But those juries that hold the responsibility to acquit, the only side they hear, the only person they really get to hear from who's making that compelling argument, presenting the case, is that defense attorney. Right. And that is why they carry so much responsibility and such a burden. I think that they are heroes among us. And so I break from my conservative brethren who love to support the prosecution and detest defense counsels, and I take the other point of view.
Well, I agree with you. And until relatively recently, I was a big supporter of the death penalty. But because of instances like you said, the 23 people in Illinois, we make too many mistakes. You can't, in good conscience, support a death penalty, right, when there have been probably hundreds of people put to death that were innocent, and people that have been let go after spending decades in jail that were innocent.
Right. Find me a person who thinks the government does a good job of delivering the mail. You can find one.
You remember I'm a mailman, right?
Yeah, we still have a mailman. And we know all the horror stories about the government delivering the mail. All right. So they can't take a letter from point A to point B, but we trust them to kill the right person. Well, that's silly. Right. Mm-hmm. And it is why, again, I sort of break from fellow conservatives. I'm not in favor of the death penalty. And I think, by the way, if you're going to have a death penalty, there ought to be an asterisk by it. And that is that someone can only be put to death if a member of the family harmed by the capital offense pulls the switch. Because if we're going to take someone's life, the state is going to do it. It ought not be done impersonally. And it ought to actually be done by somebody who said, you killed my father, you were convicted by his peers, so I'm going to pull the switch. And if nobody in that man's family can pull that switch, then he lives. But in general, I don't trust the government to kill the right person. I don't trust them to do much of anything right.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. All right, a quick shout out, what do you call it? A shameless self-promotion. Please go to liberty-lighthouse.com. And particularly, I would like you to go to the books page, liberty-lighthouse.com/books, and pre-order A More Tyrannical King. It's my new book. It comes out in 10 days. And it's $10.99 in paperback form, $5.99 in an ebook. And I would really love it if you go buy it. It's my best book yet. It's my third one, and I'm very proud of this one. So proud of the first one. Each one gets better, in my opinion. The first one was okay. Second one's better. Third one's better yet. Fourth one is already underway, but that's going to be about a year before I can get it out. But liberty-lighthouse.com/books and pre-order A More Tyrannical King. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, Buck v. Bell. Are you familiar with that case?
Not by citation. Please go further.
Buck v. Bell was the sterilization of imbeciles.
Yes.
And
yes.
Or
what is the line? 3 generations of imbeciles is enough, right, or something like that.
Right.
Yeah. So the great Oliver Wendell Holmes line. Forgive me for not
knowing it by name. I wouldn't have known it.
Citation.
I wouldn't have known it by name either, except for listening to the con law class recently. Mm-hmm. thank you, Sarah, for putting the link in the chat, the video chat there to liberty-lighthouse.com/books. Okay, so Buck v. Bell, they decided it was during eugenics, and eugenics was basically settled science for the time. And eugenics was the idea that we could make society better by getting rid of the imbeciles. But imbeciles wasn't what we think of it today. It wasn't just stupid people. It was more basically any undesirable. And so it went to the Supreme Court, and the idea was the three generations. Well, Sarah, the mom, um, she was deemed to be an imbecile because she was pregnant and had a baby out of wedlock early. So she was deemed to be imbecilic because she was promiscuous, supposedly. What I don't believe came out in the court case is that she had a baby out of wedlock because she was raped as a teenager. So, okay, there's a wrong finding by the court. Then I can't remember the daughter's name. I want to say it began with a V, but the daughter, well, she was kind of imbecilic, but that's because she got syphilis. She was, a perfectly healthy, smart girl who could read and write and everything, but she got syphilis, and syphilis ate at her brain a little bit, and she started to have those little lapses every now and then. And then the baby, which was to be the third generation, the baby was only 6 months old at the time, and this is like the 1920s or 30s. They really couldn't tell a whole lot from a 6-month-old baby. So the court held that yes, in Virginia, you can sterilize an imbecile after you can show 3 generations of imbecility. And they were all, opinions. It wasn't fact, but that was our Supreme Court. And it was all based on settled science. Eugenics was the popular opinion of science at the time.
Well, it was it was a popular derivative of, well, let me go back and make a bigger point. There are a handful of human beings throughout history who would be most distressed at what's been done in their name. Jesus Christ comes to mind.
Mm-hmm.
So does Karl Marx, by the way.
Yeah.
And so does Charles Darwin. And so eugenics was the offspring of Darwin's original work, where, he studied so many species, and he left humans out of it. He had nothing to do with humans until his next book, which is a very difficult read, by the way, but worth reading. Darwin kind of got bullied into it by relatives and peers to sort of take that his whole evolutionary work and that species work and transfer it to humans. And then we know what was done with it. And so, from Darwin, you can skip to Margaret Sanger if you want, and the mother of the eugenics movement in the United States. You can also point to Adolf Hitler.
Mm-hmm.
No Darwin? I don't know. Maybe no Hitler. I'm not making the argument. I'm asking the question. And the point is that what we do over and over and over again as a species is we take the good works and the good teachings or the good ideas or provocative ideas of one, and we turn them into movements that allow humans to harm other humans. Literally, since the day of Christ forward, we've had people rationalizing why harming somebody in the name of Christ is what he would have wanted us to do. And I suspect that's not the case. And just like the work of Darwin, he would have been appalled at what was happening in the 20th century. All a derivative, a corruption of his work. And there's nothing, by the way, in the Soviet Union or China or Cuba or Vietnam or anywhere else, for that matter, that Karl Marx would recognize or support. No. Yeah, and yet we go forth in their name, right? And that's what people do.
A couple of little things here. A text message from a listener that says science by definition is never settled, and I have said that many, many times. I completely agree. Number two, during the Nuremberg trials after World War II, the German quote unquote scientists were asked if they had invented this idea of eugenics, of sterilizing and killing off one entire race. And they said, no, we got it from the Americans in Virginia. The really funny thing about that is Justice Holmes, who wrote that horrible, horrible decision,
Right.
had taken a leave from the Supreme Court to be one of the judges that sat on the Nuremberg trials. So he was there when the Nazis said, we got it from you, man.
Right.
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 Dave Sumrall is joining us early. And since we were already talking about the J6 stuff a little bit, let's see what he has to say about anything that we're doing tonight.
Ladies and gentlemen, our next guest thinks hot dogs are just American tacos. He is Justice for J6 Prisoners advocate and StopHate.com owner, David Sumrall.
Welcome to the show, Dave.
Hello, David.
Can't hear you, Dave.
Juggling everything, man. Bouncing from phone calls and back and forth. How are y'all today?
Good. I saw you bouncing around there with phones and stuff, and that's what you've been connected into the video chat here for like 15 minutes, but you weren't in your seat at all.
No, I've been walking around, going back and forth. You know how it is. It's good to see y'all, brother.
Well, I know at one point I think Dave said he hadn't seen Brent in a while, so I thought, hey, you're both
here. I am, proof of life.
The one and only Mr. Hamachek. It's good to see you, my friend.
Yeah, so thank God there's only one of me.
I know, right? We couldn't handle any more than that.
Right.
Brent brought up Enrique's sentencing. Yeah. And I said, we got Dave Sumrall coming on later, and Dave's the big Justice for J6 guy. So we were talking about it, and Brent seems to think that the big deal is going to be, does it survive appeal?
Right. That's a great question. Does it make it that far? Do they file it properly? Do they get a shot at it? And do they kick it up from there? And would the Supreme Court see it if it made it that far? These are all real questions, real concerns. It's the same attorneys, the same basic people that are going to see the appeal that had the case. So there's really limited hope in that in the first place. But, this exculpatory evidence, all the things that these judges are not allowing into the case should be great material for appeals. We just have to see if they'll look at it. It's like the evidence that we submitted for the trials themselves many times got censored away from the juries or the judges as well. They would decide not to let them view our discovery. So when you see that, you see the just travesty of justice for these people. They're not getting their fair day in court. You could argue vigorous defense, but what can you do when the judge won't let you submit video? So, it's the same stuff.
And I don't know, Dave might know this, but from an appeal standpoint, there's two different things that you can do, and they're not mutually exclusive. One is to appeal the conviction itself, and the other one is then, of course, to appeal the sentence. My understanding is that if you appeal the conviction and it's denied, you then still have the ability to appeal the sentence. And, it is interesting also, you mentioned the Supreme Court. Just living in Realville, where I sadly reside along with the ghost of the late Rush Limbaugh. I can't imagine this Supreme Court granting cert to this case. I can't imagine them doing it. They're not going to want to get involved. And I hope I'm wrong. On some level, I hope I'm not wrong. I hope it's not needed, right? I hope we don't find out. I hope that something happens sooner before that level. But if our last ditch effort is the Supreme Court, I suspect we're in the ditch.
I agree.
Because I don't think they'll grant cert.
No, I agree. And that's the travesty of this justice system, the Department of Injustice, as we call it, because there's no fairness. Really, when it comes down to evidence, and they literally censor that away from any possibility of seeing the light of day, you have no defense. And most of these attorneys, especially the public defenders, I can't say that about the private ones, but they just simply try to negotiate a plea deal. I literally got a message from a guy, and he said, look, I told my attorneys about you to hire you as an investigator. They said, well, the government doesn't pay us enough to hire experts. Now, we know that's not true. We know that there's funds for that. And then they said, we really don't want to go through evidence because then we would have to file motions and arguments. And we just want to do the bare minimum. They just want to hold their hands and walk them through the appeal so the government can get their pound of flesh. There's no justice in that.
Well, and if you've got proof that attorney said that should be grounds right there for a retrial. I mean, that's, ineffective counsel.
What's terrible is, to be honest with you, Peter, we have proof and proof and proof. Judges just biased comments about J6ers in general, comparing the event to a Hitler scenario, comparison, insurrection talk, Judge Walton saying he's not letting any of these J6ers through his court. You can't make statements like that and still consider yourself impartial or blind justice. There's no such thing there. They have ripped that blindfold off and put their whole weight on one side of the scale at our detriment, all for politics, all for this election, all for their power and their pound of flesh to show who's in control of the people, and that we just need to step into line. We've had so many more arrests. They're cranking up the arrest. One of the prosecuting attorneys was overheard by one of the defendants the other day. They said they wanted 1,400 more arrests as soon as possible. For what? These people have been roaming the countryside for 2.5 years. And now you're going to say they're a danger threat and they're a flight risk. I call BS on that. They've been sitting here not doing anything, not going anywhere for 2.5 years. And you're going to round up these grandmas. And we see, guys, the suicide numbers going up, and that's not anything for any other reason than to add to the January 6th body count. And that's completely pressure by the FBI and the DOJ, and that's the reality that our congressmen and our senators really seem to have a disconnect about what not only is good for the people, but what keeps us alive. And to let the FBI just bounce around and do this to people is ridiculous.
I agree. Hey, we got like 2 minutes left before the break. So let's give that to Brent here to tell the world what's going on in the world of Brent Hamachek and Common Ground Campus. And
Sure. So, this weekend, depending upon when folks are seeing this weekend, the 9th and 10th of September, we're actually going to be down in the Brownsville, Texas area along the border with John Rourke, who's put together a border cleanup program. I don't know if your audience might have seen the garbage pile. Our southern border literally looks like a landfill, and I'm not exaggerating. It's so we'll have equipment and volunteers, and we're going to step down to the part of the country where Joe Biden says there's no problem, and we're going to go clean up the problem, and hopefully to draw some notice to it, build a little community, have people of different political walks of life involved, and that's what's next. Thank you.
Right, thanks, Brent. Be back in 3 minutes, my friends.
This is Elizabeth McCabe, aka Lucky.
Sorry to cut you off there.
No, somebody had to. Well, you said 2 minutes, so I was
wrong. That was my fault. I looked down at the clock. I thought I had 2 minutes, and then I immediately started to hear music, and the producer said 30 seconds.
I've been cut off before, so you guys have some fun. David, good to see you, and
See you, Brett.
I'll see you next month if I don't get killed at the border this weekend.
You be careful down there, man. Send me reports, brother.
I got rattlesnake guards, so
Good.
if I die from a rattlesnake bite, it'll have to be from the knees up, and I guess same thing with a shot coming at me. So we'll see what happens.
You be careful. Keep your head down.
All right, guys. See ya.
See you, brother.
Thanks, Brent. See you next month. It gets really freaking hot in this room with all these lights and crap.
Man, I'm telling you.
So every commercial break, I reach over here and I turn on an air conditioner, which is that noise that you probably hear now.
I don't hear it. No, you're good. Leave it running, man. Nobody cares.
I can hear it.
Yeah, that's true. That's good. You been staying out of trouble?
I've been too busy to be in trouble, man. I got the newest book coming out here in 10 days. I got another book that I just sent off to be reviewed by a doctor. I'm trying to build my own custom U.S. Constitution course. I'm trying to finish the Institute on the Constitution courses that I started to put online. I don't know what made me think I could do all this crap at the same time.
Probably a God thing, like you got to get this done. Like this is the time, move, and being so smart, being able to write and everything and spell, that's on you, man.
Oh no, I can't spell for crap. That's where AI comes in.
I love it.
Spell checker. Grammarly, stuff like that.
Yes, I'm with you. That's good stuff. Well, at least you're writing, man, and putting it down for other people.
Oh, yeah. And I started putting up an article every week. So, yeah.
That's great. That is great. Proud of you, man. That's awesome. Wish I could do stuff like that. I just do movies and videos and junk like that.
I wish I had more time to do this stuff. I'd much rather do this. At least, here I feel like I'm at least trying to make a difference. Delivering the mail is like just ridiculously mundane.
That's your day job, huh?
Yeah.
That's great, man. That's great. I wish I had more work right now, carpentry-wise. We starving to death over here. And, heat and seasons and all that stuff affect my business anyway, so.
I need a deck.
Well, I need to come do it. What state?
Pennsylvania.
That's right. That's right.
I got a door. I want to move from one side of the house to the other where there's a window now, and then I want to build a platform and a deck out that new door.
I like that. I was in Pennsylvania a couple of weeks ago.
What?
Went through there to go to New York. Went up to a little event in Long Island.
Coming back.
Coming back.
Got Sarah in Oregon.
Because you can handle the truth.
The American dream has become a nightmare. Signs of the time are on cardboard on corners in town. Like a cancer that's silently spreading, there's an unspoken fear. We're on our way down. We must take America back.
That's right, we must take America back. That's why we do what we do. Welcome back to the top of the second hour of National Intel Report, live on Republic Broadcasting Network, Liberty Lighthouse on Mojo 50 Radio, Patriot Nation Radio Network, and, well, anywhere else you hear it or see it. Let's see. I promised we had Dave Sumrall at the top of the second hour here. We got Dave and we got a phone call. So before we get back to Dave, let's see what Sarah in Oregon has to say. Welcome to the show, Sarah.
Hi. I'm going to have to make this really quick. Share the show out. And also support free speech. Whatever station you listen to. That's my PSA for the week. Bye.
Thank you for the weekly PSA, Sarah.
So good. So
all right. Mr. Sumrall, Mr. Justice for J6 Prisoners Extraordinaire. There's been a lot going on in your world.
Yeah.
And in one hand, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, I saw somebody, one of these J6 defendants, got their case thrown out because of evidence that was not allowed to be presented at his trial. But on the other hand, we got people getting 15 and 20 years. One, like you said, Enrique
Tario.
Yeah. I want to say Torres, and I'm like,
Right.
I know that's not it.
No.
Enrique Tario got, was it 22 years? And he, like you said earlier, he wasn't even there.
No.
So
Yeah, it's a really weird thing. I got another call from another J6er that is going later to turn himself in, surrender himself to his prison sentence. And, he got a handful of months to serve. And he was at the West Tunnel. And not that he wants more, don't get me wrong. But he called and he's like, David, I don't understand. Why did these guys that didn't do anything, they were not even near a place where some of the things that happened around the place where he was. And he said, they're getting years and I'm getting a couple of months. What's going on with that? And I said, brother, it's all just part of the game. It's called terrorism.
Yeah.
It's terrorism, man. They want their pound of flesh. They want their power. They want their control. They want their narrative. And they're willing to throw anybody under the bus to get that. And I'm just telling you, and your audience can appreciate this. Don't mess with the Proud Boys. Y'all have bitten off more than you can chew. I'm just saying. They have no idea who these guys are and how funny they are. They will meme them into a very bad place.
Meme them to death. You know what's really funny is I had never heard of the Oath Keepers. It's not true. I had not heard of the Oath Keepers until shortly before the January 6th events. And when I heard of the group, I thought, well, that's me.
That's right.
You know, I swore that oath in 1990, and I've spent the majority of the rest of my life trying to uphold that oath.
Yes.
Maybe I need to look into this group.
Yeah.
And then that all happens, and now the group is pretty much gone, or they've gone underground where I can't even find them anymore.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, it's really sad too, because we did a lot of events around the country over the last few years. They do security for those things. They do security for congressmen and senators and, high profile targets. And these are trusted ex-members of the military and law enforcement. They're oath keepers. And that's what we've tried to tell people for years about that. What is wrong with keeping your oath? If you took an oath to the United States and to the Constitution, defend enemies, foreign and domestic, all that stuff, then why would you want somebody to ever give that oath up? Why would it be a bad thing to keep that oath? Because it's what this country is defended with and built upon, and it's all the morals and values that we hold dear. So to criminalize them as bad people, to make up stories, look at the Proud Boys, the good work that they've done, the fundraisers, the raisers, the toy drives, the community support, the defense of innocent people that want to go to protests or events or rallies, but Antifa would beat them up. And the Proud Boys just stepped up and said, we don't want to see that happen anymore. If these cops aren't going to do anything, we'll do it. We're good at that. So, it's a necessity thing. And it's really sad that it's come to that. But let me just take it one step further and throw that comparison all the way across the Antifa is our version of ISIS, created by our government to do their dirty work as needed, very loosely organized, they say. But then we saw when Biden was, quote, installed, they didn't need Antifa anymore. And what did you hear from them? Oh, we're mad. We didn't get what we wanted out of the deal. We still want chaos and anarchy. And it's just like ISIS. When we quit using them and threw them to the side, they said, oh, we're not finished yet. You can't do this to us. We're doing the same thing right here in America. People don't realize it.
I've repeatedly compared Antifa to Hitler's brown shirts.
Same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They, not officially part
Right.
of the government,
Yeah.
not officially part of the party, but they went out and did the party's dirty work. Yeah.
That's exactly right. And unfortunately, that's where we are. The other brown shirts, the FBI, the hit squads that go around. And there was a really good video the other day, 4 days ago, and it showed the FBI raiding another J6er's home to arrest them. And, the guys come up with their, now they're not aiming like them, but they're ready to, they're right there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And they surround, they take the guy out. And then the guy goes up to the door, out with your hands up, hands up, hands up. It's the girlfriend. She wasn't even there. All that. And the comments online were, wow, they are actually ready to shoot someone over a misdemeanor.
Mm-hmm.
Now that's what it is. This guy trespassed, big deal, $50 ticket, whatever. No, you're going to spend thousands of dollars on investigations and hit squads and choreograph all that and send all these high-powered guns in to arrest these innocent people. And it's just a total overreach, and people need to wake up to that.
Like you said, they, generally speaking, like prior to January 6th, you could walk on the grass near the Capitol, but
right.
shortly before the protest or whatever, they decided to make that, off limits area.
Yeah.
So how many people walked across the grass, not even knowing that they were trespassing or breaking a rule at all, because they had been there before and walked across? Yeah, you raising your hand.
Yeah, like 10,000 more of me too. But it's funny because in the trial today, I just heard a little inside information, and Inspector Floyd, the guy that looked up and said yes and looked over and said yes and told everybody to start bombing the crowd and shooting the crowd, he admitted that today in court. Yeah, I gave the order to start firing on the crowd. Yeah, I did this. Yeah, I did that. And I'm thinking to myself, so you're single-handedly responsible for inciting the riot. There was no violence going on. When Waldo was screaming on the radio, oh, send the tacticals, send the squads down here, they're attacking, they're throwing stuff. what's amazing is in the video from the public, nobody's throwing anything. Nobody's doing anything. And this guy's screaming on the radio, fire, fire, fire. When all this comes out, I think it's going to look a lot different than what people have been told for 2.5 years. And, hopefully we'll see a major shift in the prison population. I really pray for that.
I like the way you said that.
Yeah. Well, we need a J6 pardon of innocence. There's no question. We have to do something for these folks, or they're going to run around the rest of their lives with felonies on their records and bogus charges that they can't live a normal life in society the way we have it with those kind of things hanging over their head. We have to do something that's going to be Trump, the J6 pardon of innocence. And
I haven't heard anybody say that. I have not heard any of our political candidates say that they plan to pardon at least the non-violent J6ers.
yeah, well, my opinion on that. Pardon them all. It's too much hassle and too much investigative work to try to find out who the 3 or 4 little bad guys were. It'll be real easy to arrest most of the bad guys off of the police records and FBI records and accomplices that they hire. So we can get a lot of the bad guys just like that. But it's not the people, because they were tricked from the day one. And let me tell you another thing about Inspector Lloyd. The boundaries around the Capitol came up. You remember after January 6th, they came out with an overhead map and it had a red line all the way around it. And they said, that's the boundary. Well, there was no red chalk. There were no even red fences in all those areas. They just kind of made this imaginary line. So they asked Inspector Lloyd, why was this barrier set up? And he said, well, because Vice President Pence was coming and we wanted to make sure that we had an area secure for his presence. So the attorney asked him, he said, so you do this every time Mike Pence comes in the building?
No.
He was like, well, no. Oh, so you see where I'm going with that? It's just amazing the lies that they try to fabricate on the spot. No, it's because Pence was here. So you do this every time? No. Well, then why'd you do it this time? I mean, so you see the setup more and more as time goes on. Let me tell you, Lara Logan's movie, she just released her trailer today. Amazing. I just saw Dinesh D'Souza's trailer. Amazing. It's not released yet. So these are 2 films that are going to be, really eye openers. And then our film comes out early October. We're going to drop another teaser trailer on 9/11 and hopefully get some interest from both sides to watch this next film. And it's J6, A True Timeline. It's going to be amazing. Just shows police body cam, the inside conversations that nobody's had any access to because of the squelch on the footage. If you can't get it. So we have procured quite a collection in 2.5 years, and we're ready to expose the inside story to the people.
Well, you don't need to be super smart. You don't have to know any of the stuff that you've uncovered. You don't have to see any of these videos to know that there's 500,000 or more people in town. Maybe bicycle barricades and styrofoam helmets might not be enough. Clearly they were not prepared for the number of people in town. I don't care if they're all free love hippies. You get that many people together, you have better and more security than what we could see around the Capitol that day.
Oh, there was better security at every other event in our nation's history.
Right.
I can say that with real confidence because 5 police, 2 women, 3 men with no shields, no batons, no battle armor, no helmet, no vest, standing up there trying to hold back 10,000 people is never going to work out. Somebody's either going to push you down or talk around you. And if you've ever been to an event, there's those people. And if the government was smart, they would understand who they're dealing with in Antifa, because when we had a rally in DC on Freedom Plaza in 2019, Antifa had 1,200 people there. They were trying to attack our stage while we were having our event. And they would do it in 2 different places at the same time, try to weaken the defenses. It's the art of war, draw the defenses over here and do something somewhere else. And so strategically, they were trying to come into our event in 2 different places. They did the same thing at the Capitol. If you watch the movies, they went in through the front gate and the side gate, and then they tore that fence down and nobody ever knew from then on. So it's really interesting, man. And I hate to think that we won't ever get to the bottom of this, because we will. And I just don't know what that looks like for the people that are supposedly in power, because we've tried to warn everyone, and we've tried to say what the consequences of these crimes against people are, deprivation of constitutional rights and stuff like that, are very serious offenses. And I made the mistake, I guess, of going on to Twitter and talking about one of the judges and what the legal ramifications to some of their actions are. And so the House a week and a half ago and wanted to have a little talk and ask me if I'm in a militia, ask me if I own guns, ask me all these stupid
Was your
questions.
answer to all of their stupid questions, "That's none of your business. That's none of your business. That's none of your business"?
No, I have a lot more fun with them than that, man. I
Oh, yeah?
really do. Yeah, I talked to him for about 30 minutes, man. And my friend got the second half recorded. He was over here, but I showed a trailer to my new movie and what's going on. And I said, yeah, I know what you're talking about. Absolutely. And I said, that's taken out of context. And I said, here's what I'd like to see. I'd like to see the people that filed all those false reports about my comments. I'd like to see something happen to them, because here the FBI shows at my house for the fifth time. And I asked the agents, I said, can I get a business card from you? They're like, yeah, we really don't give business cards. So they end up in the bathrooms and stuff. And I said, that's hilarious, man. I said, but what's funny? I said, the last FBI guy that was here, he left me a card. And they were like, what? The FBI's been here before? What for? And I said, are you kidding me right now? January 6th. I said, they've been here 4 times. They've been in my house. We've talked twice inside with my attorney one time. That's not even in your report that they've been here at all? They were like, no. I said, don't you find that odd? Don't you think maybe they're trying to set me up? Why would they do that? Why would they not talk? So now they're asking, are you in a militia? No, heck no, I'm not in a militia. Do you know where the judge lives? No, and I don't care. I'm not after you don't understand. In my speech, in my statement, I said, I want the court to handle it. It's not me. I'm not a judge, jury, or anything. I want the court to handle this, but he needs to be held to the letter of the law. And unfortunately, that letter is horrible for him for what he's done to other people from his place of high authority. So there are real world ramifications to all these crimes that they commit. There are penalties for those crimes. I didn't write the laws. I didn't write that stuff down 200 years ago. That's not me. I'm just reading the stuff and studying the stuff. And if you're going to come to my house and threaten me because I quoted something out of our founding papers, that's on you. So now you're coming to my house to do me harm. And there's laws about that in Texas. So, when all your neighbors on your whole street are calling you afterwards, everything okay? That was them again, wasn't it? Everybody in my neighborhood knows. Let's just put it like that. And they seem to always be watching. So that's not a threat in any way, shape, or form. That's just a matter of saying you better know where you're standing and what you're doing when you decide to do what you're going to do. Because this is Texas, man. And the next conversation will be with my sheriff when they come to town. So if they want to be arrested for harassment, I'm going to look into getting a restraining order. I've been nice to these guys multiple times, and they keep harassing me, intimidating me, keep threatening me. I'm not going to play that anymore.
You brought up your sheriff, and that's a really good point. Your sheriff, according to Mac/Prince v. the U.S.
Yes.
I think it was Clinton. Supreme Court case from 96-ish, where the sheriff was out and out declared the chief law enforcement officer of a county.
Yeah.
Which gives him the authority to say what other law enforcement agencies can or cannot operate in his county.
That's right.
That's a really good point. You should, if you don't know your sheriff well, you should get to know your sheriff well.
Well, there's been a lot of argument, and you've heard them before. Who are our constitutional elected sheriffs? Constitutional guys that follow not the boss that put them in a position, but the position that people hired them to fulfill. And they really are the last line of defense against a tyrannical government. They can protect you. States' rights still trump, right? But they forget all that stuff when they send the FBI down from DC and they cross your state lines. They don't even have the authority to investigate here like that. Plus, I'm a citizen, plus all these other reasons that it's illegal. And beyond being immoral, unethical, and terroristic, and I think last time I was here, I always like to read that definition so people have it fresh. It's the definition of terrorism: the unlawful use of violence and intimidation, especially civilians, in the pursuit of political aims.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see in there where it says anybody can be a terrorist but our government against its people. And that's what we've been warned about since the foundation of our country. And here we are. What are we going to do about it?
Right. And for you, if the FBI had been to my house 5 times, I would have my sheriff on speed dial.
Yeah.
I mean, I happen to live right across the street from my sheriff. FBI shows up at my house, I'd be like, why don't we walk right over there and have this conversation?
Yeah. I'd be throwing rocks at his window or something to get his attention. I'd be doing something, scream. I don't know. But what's going to get his attention is that flashbang. So I told these FBI agents, I said, look, I want to make sure y'all aren't coming back with that complimentary flashbang. And they're like, we don't do that to everybody. I said, now, wait a minute. Judge Holland and Christopher Wray worked it out to where everybody gets a complimentary flashbang for the neighborhood. And the big crew with the big car with the ram thing on the front and all that stuff. So they said, no, we don't do that to everybody. I said, you guys, really don't know what's going on, and you see this on social media. Oh, the only people that are arrested are violent and this and that. We know that's a bold-faced lie.
Right.
Innocent people that walk through doors.
Who was the old man with Trump's team? The old, really rich, I can't think of his name right now, where they showed up, the pre-dawn raid with long runs and all this other kind of
Roger
stuff.
Stone.
Roger Stone,
Yep.
who does not have any record of owning a firearm, who's never been accused of anything violent at all.
No.
Pre-dawn raid, long guns drawn, to drag the guy out of his bed in his pajamas.
While his wife had cancer. Right. See, this is the other thing. They care not about our humanity or our need or anything that's going on in our lives. So wasn't it funny that the media was there to cover Roger Stone's deal? Someone tipped him off and they were filming the whole thing like it was an HBO special. Same thing happened with Oath Keeper Stuart Rhodes. When he was arrested, there just so happened to be a news copter flying over his house, capturing it all on video. I don't know how these things keep happening. It's just the weirdest coincidences.
It is. Boy, CNN just really knows where to be, huh?
Yeah,
but you got me thinking, like, if the FBI were to show up here, because I probably said some things on air over the last few years that might raise some eyebrows if enough people actually listen to me.
Right.
If they were to show up here and be like, "Are you a member of a militia?" I'd be like, "No, I can't find a local one. You know where one is?" Like,
I feel that way, dude. I do some stuff like that. Yeah.
Like, you own firearms? Yep. You want to see them?
Yeah. Well, I told him, I said, look, everybody in Texas owns firearms. What are you talking? What kind of questions? I said, from BB guns up. And I said, now I'm not a 50 cal guy, but anything in between is fair game in Texas, right? So they're asking about a militia. And I'm like, it's not illegal to be a member of a militia, is it?
Nope.
So the questions that they even ask are so leading and entrapping. And it's just a sad thing that they didn't know who I was. They're so smart. They said, do you have any social media accounts?
Like, damn well I do. And so does everybody else in the country. Like,
their complaint came from social media. That's how bright these guys are. So I did take the opportunity to show them the trailer to the movie. And then he made the brilliant statement of, what do you do with this? Do you put it on YouTube? I was like, are you serious? YouTube cancels me every time I sign up for it. They do not want they wouldn't put this on there. It's like, no, this is the truth about January 6th. Are you kidding me? And I said, y'all don't know I've put out 2 documentaries. Y'all don't know I work as an investigator for the lawyers. Y'all don't know I've testified in these court cases. And you're standing here at my house like this. You didn't know all that? Don't you think that's weird? It's kind of weird.
It is kind of weird. You would think that if somebody has such a provocative history, that they would maybe send the agents that were there before, or at least inform the new agents that they're sending.
I got the business card right here. If you want me to call them and we can have, hey, why did they?
Let's get them on air. Come on, plug your phone into your computer and let's get them on air right now.
See, I live so close to Dallas that it's either the Dallas branch or the Frisco branch. And the first time it was Dallas, the first couple of times, 4 times. But then this last time it was the Frisco branch. So why do the branches not communicate? Why they're 15, 20 miles away from each other,
Well,
probably.
maybe they switched because the Dallas branch wasn't getting the results they wanted. So they said, well, let's get these guys over here in Frisco.
Well,
Hey, it's almost time for commercial break. So tell people how we can support what you do.
stophate.com/support. And of course, you can go to stophate.com/J6 to support our J6ers in their most great time of need. They really need letters, prayers, funding for their lawyers. We've had so many arrests in the last few weeks. We've added half a dozen people in the last 2 days to our list of people to help. So if y'all can help support us in the work we do at stophate.com/support, I would greatly appreciate it. Greatly.
Yeah, and by the American Gulag Chronicles.
Yes.
American and Gulag, 2 words that should never be put together. And yeah, you're holding yours up for the camera. I was just looking for mine. I'm like, crap, I moved stuff around and now I don't know where it is.
There's a link at stophate.com. Please buy one for yourself and buy one for your library.
Great book. Everybody should buy one. Hey, it's a great time. We'll be back in 3 minutes. Thanks, Dave.
Thank you.
You're clear.
Thank you.
That was it?
I mean, you can stick around if you want to. I got another half an hour.
I got a kid. My wife just got. It's been a long day, my brother.
You look like a pretty busy man a second ago.
It's like that all day, every day, bro. From the time I wake up in the morning about 6, my phone rings until I go to bed at about 2.
Wow.
Defendants, lawyers, reporters, congressmen, everybody, bro. And it's just a weird, really weird place. I've been trying to get help to help organize so I don't just stay inundated with calls all the time, but I don't know what else to do right now. It's a mess.
Yeah.
Keep fighting.
Good fight, my friend.
You know I will. Love you, brother. Appreciate you having me.
See you in about a month.
Thanks, man. See ya.
Oh man. All right. Hey, Mr. Producer Mike, put the music back on for me.
All right, here you go.
533748 855 the number 2. Keep it today.
Hi, Tom Bolton for Ease Off. I know so many of you are finding our Easy 4 carcass drop and lift an essential tool for your meat processing operation. But today I want to spotlight 4 of our new products. First, our right height hog cradles with steel or aluminum frames. Our customers love this back-saving innovation that enhances sanitation and speeds production. Next, our beef cradles with stainless steel or aluminum frames eliminate rust and corrosion. We hope you'll compare our quality and prices for this essential part of your processing line. Our cradles are especially effective when used with our power skinner. And finally, our hook tumbler will keep your hooks clean and polished. Easeoff.com. We make pigs fly. Cows, too.
Ease Off, LLC, 417-932-6419.
Corporate media dominates the American opinion. Finding independent voices that counter this avalanche is becoming increasingly difficult. With the endless corruption running rampant throughout our government, independent voices are needed more than ever to battle the offensive against our freedoms and liberties. As a listener of RBN, no one understands this concept better than you. Now it's up to you to do your part. The time has come for you to take action and begin broadcasting the truth to hundreds or thousands of people every month. Sound impossible? Quite the contrary. With pointed slogans from LibertyStickers.com, you can reach countless sleeping Americans unaware that they live in a real-life wonderland. LibertyStickers.com has a huge inventory of political bumper stickers and messages that reflect the truth about our government, our politicians, and the future of America. With so many in stock, there's one perfect for you. Visit us today at LibertyStickers.com. Again, that's LibertyStickers.com. Do your part. Your voice is important. Let it be heard.
Some say life will beat you down, break your heart.
Hey, welcome back. It's the final segment of tonight's show. National Intel Report on Republic Broadcasting Network, Liberty Lighthouse elsewhere. I had a text message for our guest that I didn't get to. I didn't see it until the break. Sorry about that. But one is the Capitol doors have to be open from the inside. That's right. Dave Sumrall, the guest in the last half hour, he had mentioned that, the two-prong attack where they came, I think it was the west entrance and the main entrance. Well, that main entrance, I believe, is the one that has the 16-ton cast bronze. They're known as the Columbus doors that are literally strong enough to withstand artillery barrage. They're magnetically locked, cannot be opened from the inside. And then there's, oh, by the way, there's also a set of glass security doors on the inside where you have to be let in. So, that should also be part of the argument in court, but I'm sure that wasn't allowed to be said. And then the other text question for the guest. Sorry about that. John Badelk, case apply, or the Castle Doctrine? Would the Castle Doctrine apply? I'm not sure what part you're talking about, except maybe when the FBI shows up at your house for the 5th time. Does the Castle Doctrine apply at that point? Castle Doctrine, for anybody who out there who doesn't know, and if you own a firearm, you should definitely know what the Castle Doctrine is. Castle Doctrine is the stand your ground law for your own house. You're allowed to defend your castle. Wow. I don't even remember where we left off before the guest joined us, but I wanted to go back to that first, 1798, when John Adams signed the Sedition Act and made free speech illegal, made it so that it was illegal to criticize your government. 9 years after our Constitution had been ratified. What was his excuse? Well, pending war. We might be going to war with France. And because we might be going to war, it's now illegal to criticize your government. Now, of course, if you allow government to take your rights away from you in an emergency situation, government will create emergency situations in order to take your rights away from you. I'm sure that is a phrase that you probably heard a few times, at least during the COVID pandemic. I hope you heard it a few times. But looking back at that, emergency situation, war, do you think maybe the idea of war being an excuse to take your rights and to take more power from we the people has to do with why they call all of these social initiatives wars? The war on crime, the war on drugs, the war on poverty. Maybe that's why they use that word. They make it a war so that they can expand their power, take it from you, and do whatever it is that they want to get done. It's a live call-in show. We haven't had a whole lot of calls tonight because we had a whole lot of guests. So 512-248-8252. And if you prefer to text, you can text 64-MY-RIGHT, 64-MY-RIGHT. That's 646-974-4487. So Reb in Colorado. That didn't take long. They gave out the phone number, and we got Reb in Colorado. Welcome to the show, Reb.
That's because we mean business. Lotus Scout Reb, 703-697-9121. Call it. We're not going to stop till we bring in troops and every stinking 911 bastard is dead in hell. Because they can get people to murder you. There's few people in the world that can control these masses of murdering bastards. That's what we found out. I don't know why nobody else found out. I know nobody's ever gotten to the top of the government. We did. And we want to use everything America's got. And everyone's dead. Every day, it just gets worse. And it's never going to get better. They're already starting to cover their nose and mouth.
Yeah.
So I was just with some people. I said, what are you doing that for? Well, the other people getting the corroded virus. And they feel better that they shouldn't get the corroded virus. I said, give it a rest, stupid. I'm getting fed up with your corroded. The only thing
I just saw an
we
article.
don't want to be shut down. We have to kill the bastards. We got enough firepower, and it's go time. What do you want to wait for?
No, I'm not going to go that far, Reb. I'm not going to call for killing anybody. And I'd prefer that you not do that on air, at least not on my show. Those are Those are fighting words that will get us all in trouble. I am not calling for violence. I am still calling for learning your rights, because there's so many people out there that don't even know their rights. Education is step number one. Learn what is in your right, what are your rights, and what is the proper role of government. And then stand up when somebody tries to take your rights away, and when government steps out of bounds. Normally, I like talking to you, Reb, but you start calling for violence openly like that, and I got to cut you off. I'm sorry.
That's why. It's a war. This isn't violence. This is saving your lives from murderers. They're practicing to murder you. We're not wrong. You can call us a lot of things, but we're barbaric, and there's a difference between barbaric and violent. We're not violent. We hate violence. We like getting rid of those people who want to murder. They told us that. You're not. They couldn't prove we're guilty, but they know we are. They just couldn't prove it. I mean, when they say that to you, what is that? That's the end of America. America doesn't go by your thoughts on the matter, jerk. You got evidence or you don't.
That right there is where we started the show. I started the show talking about the Supreme Court and how they use precedents, which is basically somebody else's thoughts on the Constitution, somebody else's thoughts on your rights, somebody else's thoughts that could have been.
You don't have any. The United Nations already said so. That's how we got in this mess. We were helped by a group, the Defense Intelligence. They don't do favors for you. And they took it to the top. They said, well, we'll let someone else deal with it. We're getting our say. They get their say. Look, we found it. It makes them look good. If you bother them with the wrong stuff, you're going to be in trouble. No, this was 100% slam dunk. These bastards want to die. They're ready to. They've taken their last right. All of them. You think just the Mujahideen over in that part of the world took their last right? These Guineas, they took their last right. It's a ceremony they have. We found out about it. They meet at these lodges and hold these voodoo, satanic ceremonies. I'm not kidding. They showed up at Bubba's after one of the ceremonies.
Who are these people that you're talking about?
We call them government intruder, no intelligence. They wear badges and carry guns.
Oh,
and they have a satanic cult. I'm not the only one who knows about this. One of the hosts on Republic, he studied it. Said, yeah, they get special people. They check them out and they turn them into murderers, and they'll do whatever someone tells them, get rid of whoever they want, and cover up for whoever they have them in every department. They have a murder squad, and it's not just the ones in Memphis who murdered. Well, he was just a delivery man.
So
he was.
Hold on.
He was non-white.
Hold on.
But he was murdered.
Just so I understand, you're not saying that everybody that has a badge and a gun is this way. You're saying that in every department, or at least every major department, police department, there is a select group that are part of this squad. Is that the?
Yeah, they were chosen to attack us because they broke in and put a gun to Bubba's head. They went as far as they could go. Now they told us, well, what about those two jerks that started this? Oh, they resigned, which means they're somewhere else in America doing the same thing. Resign in their world doesn't mean they're done. It means nobody knows who they are when they show up. They could be anywhere in your town. You mean they were the ones in Lakewood that put a gun above his head? Yeah. It's happened. They've caught someone who was doing some sick stuff in Denver. And then 10 months later, he was up in a mountain town, a small hickey town, doing other stupid stuff. They mentioned his name again. It wasn't he the one 10 months ago they threw out at Denver? Yeah, that's the same one. And they just he wasn't doing murder stuff. He was doing sick stuff up there, the mountain town. And it just caught everybody's attention. See, they put this out sometimes, see who's paying attention. Apparently, that's the way they all are. See how people talk? We're not the only ones who say that's the way they all are. Why did the FBI cover up for them? And why did they tell a federal agent of the United States Northern Command, we know who Bubba Scout Rivers, we're not talking to you. Why are they running from the federal government? I mean, they're working supposedly for the federal government, and they're giving Agent Kirakis, OSI Counterintelligence Northcom, a hard time. Why? Aren't they all on the same? Aren't they all on the same side? What's the problem? Something's wrong.
So are you suggesting that these what would you say, murder squads?
Guinea, we call them Guinea. Murder squad, yeah.
These murder squads in these police departments are working directly with and for federal departments or agencies or somewhere in the federal world?
Let's put it this way. Homeland Security broad knocks on my door. And she had some of the locals with her. They put her up to it. She said, you're threatening federal employees. I said worse things to somebody on the phone maybe. And worse than I said on the radio to you that you didn't want it. And so she decided to push it. I said, look, you wasted your trip here. And I gave her the name of the terrorist who worked with him and his last known address. Pick that fricker up. You turn him over to the military. Don't ever come back. I asked her, what are these jerks, the locals doing? Well, they're guarding her. Around the corner with 10, they had 10 others. They're all involved in this. They knocked on Bubba's door after one of their meetings. It was Sunday night, like 9 p.m. Wasn't that cold, but they all had the same outfit. Those knitty hats they wear in the winter. I'm serious. They had the jackets over a sweater. They all had the same thing. 3 of them stood there. She said they were in their 30s. One did the talking was like 50. She just barely described them. It's just like it on the street. She said they had come from a meeting. Now they go to your church during the day. You meet in these lodges. We know where they meet. Look at Show the Military. Elks Club. There's one called the Sons of Norway Lounge. Right here in Lakewood. We did the recon. And they showed up at Bubba's. Said they want to come in because she's the deal. And she's looking. They want to come in and, I guess, talk to her. The one who was doing the talking, the other 3 were standing there, just like they do on the street. But she just slammed the door. That's how freaky these people are. I mean, they obviously knew they had their meeting.
Have you ever thought that maybe if you didn't make so much noise, they wouldn't harass you so much?
This was before we even got on the internet. And just so you know, it wasn't us writing, kill those 2-bit gunslingers. We wrote a Twitter entry, but it was transmitted by the Defense Intelligence Agency, General Flynn's gang. This was in the end of 2010. He was in charge of the agency, and it was U.S. gunfighters rid the West of the 2-bit gunslingers. And we were at Lakewood, Colorado, Guinea, and that's when they knocked on the door. They started knocking on my door. And someone called on the phone. Said, go out and talk to them. I said, I'll tell you. Tell them drop dead. That's all. You got a problem with us, tell it to the military. They want to hear your problem. Because I'm serious. The United States, I just talked to Mr. Santiago, chief of that office of RSEC, the Army Command. And he said, yeah, you're the only ones he's ever heard of that got an outstanding from the command staff at Carlisle Barracks, Pennsylvania. That's the U.S. Army War College. In 1775, the elite of the world's military. You could graduate top of your class in West Point, never see that place. It's by invitation only. It's a 4-star country club. When I told the lady, her name was Kimberly A. Peoples, Lieutenant Colonel, Officer Commander, 717-245-3232. I can call him anytime. And you're outstanding. I said, save the medal ceremony, tell your 4 stars at the country club, make us do our job. We'll prosecute. It's up to them to go get them. And I think they can do it.
How did they feel about you giving out their phone number on the radio over and over and over again?
I don't care. You know that? They told me only the top big shots get to do that. So I must be a top big shot. Remember, RSEC called me. That's Alex Santiago. He runs that. He's got his own Gulfstream jet. I was even criticized by CID command. Well, you shouldn't be talking to Army command. I said, give it a rest. I was phoned by them. I was phoned by military federal agents from Fort Rucker, Alabama. I'm a helicopter pilot, but they got records on us. They know what we think about us. I was started in Central Command. His name is Jim Rivera, the chief agent in charge. NCIS called. I didn't even know. What does NCI doing as an Air Force installation at MacDill? That's CENTCOM headquarters, and also United States Special Operations Command. These are the people I talk to directly because they know all about Bubba Scout Rep. So you're saying,
How
why
about,
aren't
how
you
about getting
doing
one of them on the show with me? Next time, try to get one of them to come on the show. Get one of them to call in. And
Well, listen to this. I'm trying to explain this. He used to run a show on your network.
yeah, I
He
know.
talked to PMO Fort Brent. He freaked the military out because he's a reporter. He's a journalist. He's whatever you people call yourself. He's for real. He freaked them out. Now it's Fort Liberty. They took down Bragg. He was a Confederate general. It's all Fort Liberty. And they freaked out over him. He said they couldn't talk with. He was talking about Bubba Scout Rep. And they know me. They tried to report me. Didn't work out. I'm serious. They saw my picture on the new driving license. I just took a picture. That's the Agent Buchanan. She's just an MP. She calls it locals about us. They can't come over here. Against the law. They're not allowed near us. But Agent in Colorado Springs, Kid Arrakis, he calls PMO. Don't screw with our witness. She was going to send it up chain of command. I don't care what they say. It's what they do. So you're screwing. And so they see my picture. Said, that's you? I said, you know why? You're in your late 70s. You look 19. You got long, thick, blonde hair, pale white skin. Yeah, I never smoked any of that crap. Not even lit a cigarette. And I got good genetics. And I didn't age on the outside. They see me. They look like a kid. Funny, long legs, long arms, no
Well, now
body.
I want to see. If you're in your late 70s and you look 19, now I want to see a picture.
Everybody does, but what is this? We're not a dating service. This isn't some kind of... Winner gets a date with Bubba. Loser gets 2 dates. You don't want it. Somebody at the Secretary of Defense office said they wanted to date Bubba. I said, you what? What? He started mouthing off. Said something gross. I'm not going to repeat what he said. He said, I'm going to stand 50 feet away. Approach Bubba with that idea of yours. I'm going to watch her rip your arms off and beat you with. She's a monster. That's not a girl. And she likes the pronoun sir or God. When the female guineas, they don't go near her. She'd rip them like cheap cardboard. She could bench press it. She's in her good days, bench press 350. And she's getting old, but she can rip heads off. You can lift her refrigerator off the floor by herself. And Scout just hangs with her. And Scout just says, yes, sir. Bubba. They're more military than I am. But the Bubba, she's the deal. Nobody's going to stop. That's why I said these social workers, they give me a hard time. All these places, I'm a scrawny white boy. You ain't going to say that to Bubba. Nobody.
All right,
I'm telling you, CIA. So get our number out.
That's about enough rep for tonight. That's about all I can handle. I don't know why I like listening to Reb ramble like that, and I appreciate that he usually calls toward the ends of the show. But yeah, hey Reb, you got all those people on speed dial. You call all them up all the time. I'd love to hear from any of them. So you give them the show number and you have them call into the show one of these Thursday nights when I'm hosting. I'd love to speak to any of them, and I won't push them to divulge any confidential information or anything. Just love to have a chat. While I'm pausing and thinking about what to talk about next, let's remind you to visit protectwithbear.com. Protectwithbear.com. Use code Lighthouse. That is the website for Right to Bear insurance. If you own a firearm, you need carry insurance, and Right to Bear insurance is the most affordable carry insurance on the market. And code Lighthouse at protectwithbear.com will save you 10% off their already low prices. The most affordable carry insurance on the market. Code Lighthouse at protectwithbear.com. So I got a whole bunch of things going on all at once. I've mentioned I've got the brand new book coming out here in like 10 days. I'm working on another book that I sent off to be reviewed by a doctor, and then I've got my Institute on the Constitution courses in the Liberty Lighthouse classroom at liberty-lighthouse.com/classroom. working on trying to finish those up and getting them up. And I've also started working on building my own constitutional course, and I'm calling it Constitution from an originalist perspective, or the originalist Constitution, or something like that. I'm envisioning a one-day course seminar thing. This is something I don't really want to do online. This is a course that I'd rather do in person. And what my goal is to have a workbook that goes in the course that has the text of the Constitution footnoted to the Federalist Papers and the ratification debates for the Constitution. Most likely the Virginia ratification debates, because that's the one Madison was in, and Madison took impeccable notes and has exactly what everybody said. So I'm thinking about making this workbook that basically is my way of showing the only interpretation of the Constitution that really matters is what we, the people who ratified it, thought. We need to stop looking at these 9 justices in black robes, these 9 black robe tyrants, if you want to call them that, whatever, the lawyers. We've got to stop looking at what they think about the Constitution as being the supreme law of the land. The Constitution itself is the supreme law of the land, and we, the people, the citizens of this country in 1789, ratified the Constitution between 1787 and 89 through these ratification conventions. And it was we, the people, that were there. And it, the document starts out, we, the people. It was written for us. We have to understand what it says. So, like I said, the only interpretation that should matter is what those people at that time thought. One of the examples I want to, kind of work into the class at some point is the meanings of the words. You can't apply modern definitions to words in a document 250 years ago. Just like you can't use modern definitions for words if you want to go back to, I don't know, Shakespeare or Dickens or Alexander Dumas. You can't read, Three Musketeers, where he talks about putting a faggot under his arm, and use the modern definition of a faggot. It was a bundle of sticks back then. And I think that's a good example as to why we need to know what the people at that time thought the document meant. And I personally believe that the best way to do that is the Federalist Papers, a little bit of the Anti-Federalist Papers, but you could almost say that the Anti-Federalist Papers are irrelevant in that the Anti-Federalist Papers are the people that did not want the Constitution ratified. The Federalist Papers were the ones that did. Well, the Constitution did get ratified. So what was said in the Federalist Papers should be the more accurate interpretation of what it means. Between that and the ratification debates, Virginia being the one best documented, my plan is to footnote it all together. So, Constitution, all 27 amendments, followed by Federalist Papers, all 85 of them, and the Virginia ratification debates, and all tied together and footnoted as an originalist document. And of course, any class on the Constitution has to start with, what types of government are there. The fact that everybody calls us a democracy is a lie. Describing the differences between rights versus privileges. Where do rights come from and where do privileges come from? The separation of church and state, the lie about the separation of church and state, I think is an important thing to talk about. 93% of the people who signed the Declaration of Independence were Christian. 93%. And even those that weren't Christian, they still signed it. So they clearly believed in the at least the Christian structure and Christian values. It's not what we have today. And then you have to talk about the Declaration of Independence. You have to talk about the Age of Enlightenment, the 5 self-evident truths, the purpose of government. All of this before you even get to the Constitution. What I do might be controversial, but it is not revolutionary. What I do is to try to be restorative. I want to teach people to conserve our system of government, our Constitution. I want to restore the constitutional governance that we were founded upon. The people that signed the Declaration of Independence, they were revolutionary. They swore their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honors. And they were all wealthy people. They had a lot to lose. And by signing that document, they were committing treason. I'm not doing any of that. I just want to get us back to understanding our Constitution and our rights. I want to restore the Republic the way it was supposed to be. So I guess that's why I have been doing all of this lately and all of this work, especially around education. Building my own Constitution course that I want to be able to teach in public. I want to go to, Penn State University, 8-10 miles down the road and teach it to somebody there. I want to go to my local high school that has a Turning Point USA chapter and teach it there. I want to go to the Elks, the Moose, any of these churches, fraternal organizations, anything around my area, and teach what I believe to be the original perspective on our Constitution, and teach why I think that's really the only interpretation that matters. I don't know how else to say that. We've got to stop listening to other people's what they think the Constitution means and start looking it up ourselves and looking at what it meant then. What it meant when it was ratified is the only meaning that matters. Hey, if you're listening to the show live on Republic Broadcasting Network, stay tuned for Edge of Darkness with Jeffrey Bennett. Thank you to our guests, Dave Sumrall and Brent Hamachek, for joining us tonight. Thank you, Mike, my producer. Couldn't do the show without you. And thank you most of all, you listeners and callers. You're why we do this show. And until next week, protect your liberties. Once they're gone, there's no getting them back. God bless America.
It's the least we can do for the red, white, and blue. We must take America back. We must take America back.